Since 2021, Dominion built 59 new transmission lines. 25 were tied directly to specific data centers. Cost: about $2.8 billion. Now, widen the frame. Include projects indirectly tied to the same boom, and the total reaches $6.2 billion, roughly three-quarters of Dominion's transmission spending in that period, according to testimony reported by E&E News. Those are not private extension cords. They are substations, towers, and high-voltage lines inside a regulated system whose costs can reach homes and small businesses. Then, on July 31st, Virginia regulators drew a line. When a data center arrives, the building is only the visible part. Behind it comes a demand for electricity measured in tens or hundreds of megawatts. That demand can trigger a dedicated substation, a direct transmission connection, and upgrades deeper in the regional grid. Virginia's old rate structure did not always put every new transmission dollar onto the customer that triggered it. Some costs entered riders shared across customer classes. That is how a server campus in Northern Virginia can become a line item on a household bill 2 counties away. Not because a family bought AI, because the grid was planned as a shared network. This did not happen by accident. Northern Virginia became the world's most concentrated data center market because it combined fiber, cheap land, tax incentives, and proximity to government and corporate customers. The upside is real. Virginia's legislative watchdog, JLARC, linked the industry to about 74,000 jobs, $5.5 billion in labor income, and $9.1 billion in state GDP. In some localities, data centers supply as much as 31% of local revenue. But much of the employment benefit comes from construction, while the electrical load persists for decades. The economic win can land in one county. The grid cost can travel much farther. The cleanest number is $2.8 billion. 25 lines reported as directly connected to individual data centers. The larger $6.2 billion number includes indirect projects, reinforcements, and network upgrades associated with the wider growth wave. That makes it economically important, but not a neat invoice sitting on one company's desk. This distinction matters. A dedicated line is easier to trace to one customer. An upstream reinforcement may support several customers, improve reliability, or be built ahead of future demand. If we treat both categories as identical, the headline becomes louder and the accounting becomes wrong. The immediate case centered on Rider T1, the mechanism Dominion uses to recover certain transmission costs. Dominion's proposal would have raised that rider by about $2.90 per month for a typical residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt-hours. The SCC adopted a different allocation method based on each class's contribution during 12 coincident system peaks. That cut the projected monthly increase to 94 cents, a 67.5% reduction in the proposed increase. It did not erase the charge. It did not refund years of transmission spending. But it showed that an abstract allocation formula can decide which mailbox receives the bill. Dominion said Virginia had already created a large load class called GS5, with tougher commitments for customers at or above 25 megawatts. Those customers face an 85% minimum transmission and distribution demand obligation and a 14-year initial term. The utility also warned that direct assignment needs careful design. A data center can add enormous load, but also enormous billing revenue. Google and Amazon argued that any direct connect contribution should be voluntary, not mandatory. That is the strongest case against a blunt, make big tech pay everything rule. Some infrastructure serves more than one customer, and a growing customer can support system costs as well as create them. Here is what Virginia actually changed. The SCC ordered Dominion to return within 90 days with a mandatory prospective contribution in aid of construction policy for new or expanding large load customers. In plain English, when a new data center needs the direct connect substation and lines that plug it into the bulk grid, the customer should fund those dedicated facilities up front instead of automatically pushing them into shared rates. Here is the truth bomb. Virginia did not hand the entire $6.2 billion bill to big tech. It created a narrower path for dedicated future infrastructure and left the upstream grid for the next fight. That upstream question is where the biggest policy battle now lives. Once power leaves the dedicated connection, it moves through a network that serves cities, factories, hospitals, and other data centers. The SCC said it may later extend the direct assignment concept, blend it with another allocation method, or assign more costs to the GS5 class. It did not choose among those options in this order. So the $6.2 billion figure is the scale of the problem Virginia is interrogating, not the amount already shifted onto a stack of Amazon, Google, or Microsoft invoices. JLARC modeled a much longer-term risk. By 2040, generation and transmission charges for a typical Dominion household could rise by roughly $14 to $37 a month in 2024 dollars if new supply and transmission fail to keep pace. That forecast is not today's 94-cent Rider T1 increase. It is the reason today's allocation rules matter. If a power line would not exist without one data center, should that customer pay every dollar up front, or should some cost remain shared? Tell me where you draw the line. Subscribe to Silicon Valley Thirst Trap for investigations that trace AI infrastructure back to the bill, tax, or neighborhood it lands on. Virginia's decision is a boundary, not an ending. Dedicated future connections move toward the data center bill. Shared upstream upgrades remain contested. Ordinary customers are better protected from the current proposal, but they are not insulated from the AI power build-out. Next, watch 474 gigawatts. Texas froze. AI data center approvals before Texans got the bill. To see what happened when another state chose a different break on the AI power rush,